Hello, my name is Swami, otherwise known as Bruce P. Grether. I'm here with my friend.
Nimbas, otherwise known as Nimbas.
We are here to share with you again some of our thoughts and our craziness. And one thing I wanted to talk about this time is the fact that this is not entirely about my book, The Nine Realities of Stardust. Uh,
Oh no,
we will also bring in a few other interesting books at times. This is
goody.
The Faces of the Moon Mother by my dear friend Rowena Patty Kreider. And
Saint Rowena Crider.
Saint, yes. Rowena has entered the light but is more relevant than ever. This is actually an examination of the cycle of the moon in 16 phases, and they're beautifully illustrated and elucidated. And the point at this moment is that we have just come out of the new moon, which is the absolute void, the nothingness of no thingness. And
It happens to be the Chinese New Year as well.
yeah, and that's a wonderful thing too, a renewal. This is a new birth for everything in the cycle, and we are at 1% of full, which is a little tiny itsy bitsy sliver of a moon. And the amazing thing about this is something came to me this morning about the lunar cycle is that, of course, Rowena talks about the 16 phases, which she illustrates beautifully, but it's a continuous cycle. There are actually no breaks. The 16 are just stages that help us to understand.
Like you're breathing.
Yeah, yeah, they're like stop stations, so you can kind of notice. But in a sense, because this is built into the nature of existence, what we call the cycle of the moon, it's all happening all the time because it's one of those things that repeats endlessly the same. History doesn't repeat itself, actually. Sometimes there's similar patterns, but what do you think about that?
Well, I think as an amateur historian, I've been studying history my whole life, and I mean, there are patterns, but you certainly can't predict the future from the past. You
Mm-hmm.
might be able to. So I don't really know. I don't know. It's good to know what happened in the past because it gives you an understanding of what's happening in the present. But you're
Right.
not going to predict the future by that. Certainly, it's important for understanding the present. That I could agree with. Yeah.
That's a really good point. I mean, the second reality of Stardust, to come back to my book again for a second, and I noticed that the book actually matches your blanket that you have at this moment kind of beautifully. See the
How
greens?
so?
Look at the
Oh
colors.
yes. Well,
The red.
those are kind of life colors. Light
Yeah.
and darkness, animals and plants.
Well, and what you said about predicting the future, I don't think, yeah, there's your copy. Um, I don't
Ah
think
yes.
I don't think it's possible. Now this is supposedly not a promo, totally,
Uh,
but
eh, let's
you
yeah,
got to
whatever.
promote
Okay.
yourself. You got to
Don't forget,
promote.
I'm the wise guy in the class. So
You
yeah,
are. I'm glad you're so wise, but
yeah.
um,
That was a pun.
I know, I know.
So anyway,
Coming
you
from
have
you,
the
how could it
floor.
not be a pun, right? I mean, Shakespeare always, spoke on 6 or 7 different levels at once, but that was nothing compared to you. So,
Oh
anyway,
well, the lowest form of humor.
what you said about the predicting the future reminds me of reality number 2 in the which is at every moment I leap into the abyss of the unknown,
Oh,
which
that's certainly true.
which exactly well what the reason this is a reality of Stardust also is what they call quantum indeterminacy, the uncertainty principle.
Okay, now you'll have to define that because
Oh, I bet you could define it.
quantum indeterminacy. Oh, you didn't make that up. That is from quantum theory, right?
Exactly, that's right. That's correct.
What are we looking at? Reality number 2, page 71.
Yes,
Okay, all right, good. May I read the first paragraph?
of course.
Tremendous power emerges from within you when you face your fear and embrace uncertainty as something inevitable, yet not necessarily disastrous, instead, possibly an actual advantage. And I have a suggestion before I turn the floor back over to you, Swami, is that I suggest that parents, especially fathers, but mothers too, read this book to their children at bedtime. I mean, if the kids are into it and they don't think it's boring, maybe they might want to be a little older.
Older than what?
Toddler, than Pokey the Duck or The Little House, or those are very important too. Anyway, I'll let you have the floor. Well, the chair recognizes Swami.
Well, I think that all books that you read to children are important. Any book that you
absolutely
read to a child is important.
It goes right into their little sponge brains.
Anyway, what you said about reading this book to children is not such a bad idea, because this book is written in extremely simple terms.
My point of view is I think parents should be reading to their children from the day they come home from the hospital at bedtime or whenever. But bedtime is a good ritual. It's reassuring to the kids. It's a ritual. Daddy's there or mommy's there. And hopefully daddy and mommy are both there, but whatever. Someone might be working.
You raise children, and the interesting thing about that is I think that, to raise children right based on the people I know who raise children. I live with cats and adult people, so I've never actually raised a child, but I've known some excellent parents, and one of the things I learned from them is you do not speak to children as if they're inferior, stupid little animals that need to be trained. You speak to them as people directly, right?
Yes, as individual people that they are. The individual child.
And you don't speak down to them.
No. Actually, I tend to speak up to my kids are all grown now, but, I concede your point, certainly.
Yeah. And of course, another thing about the 9 realities is that this book is actually structured in a developmental way, in that it actually has a very careful structure according to stages of human development.
Yes. Well, yeah. I mean,
so it's not just made up out of nothing, right? I mean, this book, I really didn't make up anything in this book particularly.
That's right. You just put it together.
I put it together.
I have a story.
Yes, please.
About who was it?
Not
Julian of Norwich. I think it was her. Mm-hmm. She was a medieval mystic, and she was an anchorite. She lived walled up in a cell.
Who of Norwich?
Julian. She took a boy's name because women weren't allowed to write
Julian.
books.
Okay, yes.
Okay?
Yeah.
And I think it was her, subject to verification. And Jesus would appear to her in her cell. Mm-hmm. He would sit in his lap, and they would talk about stuff.
Yeah.
And once, one vision, he showed her she said it was a little shiny object the size of a hazelnut. It sounded to me like what we would describe as a ball bearing today. She said, "What is that?" And he said, "It is all that it's made." And that another point in that vision or another vision, this is the point of this whole lecture, is everything is of a piece. Everything is of a piece.
It is all that is made?
Yes.
Okay.
Like that, holding it in his hand, looked like a little ball bearing.
So you could say this is all things.
Correct.
Yeah. Pardon me, a little bit like the Chinese pearl of great price, or the cosmic pearl.
Not to get off on too many tangents, but that everything is of a piece.
Yeah.
And another way of saying it is everything is one thing.
Right.
Does that make sense?
It does, and in fact, this is a big, important part of how I think nowadays is that everything is one. I mean, we're talking about non-duality, oneness, which is actually a more subtle thing than it's sometimes been made to sound in recent years.
The nature of everything is non-dual. That is the first sentence of a very short text that was smuggled into Tibet, written on invisible ink. That's how sensitive they thought it was. But that's the first sentence. Everything is non-dual. The nature of everything is non-dual. So anyway.
Yeah, no, that's great. And you know, the beginning of this book says,
which book? Your book?
Yeah.
Okay, the book.
Within yourself, you have direct access to everything. The truth is incredibly simple. In spite of appearances, nothing is actually separate from anything else.
Bingo. That's what we were just saying.
That's
you're going to read the next paragraph, or do you want me to?
That's what non-duality is. Yeah, and in fact, and there's the author photo in case anyone hasn't seen it.
Oh, that is Howie Vodabojczyk. That is my favorite picture of you.
The original flower child, right?
God.
Okay,
Anyways,
go ahead and read the second paragraph.
Though it may seem a bit of a stretch to the rational mind, this is true. All information in the universe is immediately available to you when you listen deeply and with heightened awareness to the actual realities of the world you live in, which is the same as the world that lives inside of you. I have spoken.
Yep. See, you have spoken because...
But I'm quoting someone else's words, but they're very good words, in my opinion.
Well, not only, I mean, I think they are pretty good words, to be honest. I don't think that's
they
just
are.
ego.
I mean, that's why we're here, because you're freaking people out with this book.
Well,
so far, it's only a few people, but
it's growing every day because there are people buying it now.
Yes, absolutely.
And reading it. And you know what you said, though, that it is your words in a way because we're not really separate people. This is the strange thing about the non-duality and the oneness is that we're not really, yeah. Okay, well, maybe that's about enough to overwhelm the people for until next time.
Peace and love and justice.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much, Nimbas.
Thank you, Bruce P. Grether.